Start recording.
Okay.
All right, welcome everybody. Would you, I'm going to just give a quick name call as I look down the list here, and we'll take a look at the agenda and then we'll get going. So I'm Stephanie Frederick. I'm the chair of the Land Use Committee, and we have Pam Hodge and Mel Huey joining us. Pam's on our board and Mel is just now retired from an illustrious career in Metro, bringing us many parks and trails. We have Scott Goodman of Brent Sock Incubators, Kimberly DeLeo, who is a resident of Brentwood, Darlington, Nick Sovey, who's the executive director of Rose CDC, and Anna Weichsel, who is a chair of the Woodstock Neighborhood Association, and much more. And who else do we have here? I see Moham Modest, two of our wonderful residents. Is there anybody else now? Okay, super. All right, so let's do the agenda. We are going to have a good part of the meeting devoted to a presentation from Nick Sovey. We'd like him to reprise Rose CDC's work and explain to us what it takes to create a mercado and what we would have to do to invest in community space here in Brentwood, Darlington. Then we are going to introduce, right after that part, we're going to have an item on Brent Sock Incubators. Then we'll go on to give you an update on the TGM planning effort, speak a bit about speeding on Flavel Drive, the tree projects, and then other business that you all may bring up. And then if time permits, we'll go on to TriMet and some air quality matters. So, all right, without further ado, I would like please to call on Scott to introduce Nick Sovey.
Of course, it'll be my pleasure. So I was thinking about this. There's lots of really cool ways that I could introduce Nick, but because this is a land use committee meeting, I'm going to try and keep it focused to that realm. So in a neighborhood that seems like it's just recently getting a lot of attention as an at-risk neighborhood, and that might have to do with the ludicrously high rental prices in Portland, and this being one of the last affordable areas that we have. Nick Sovey has been advocating for and developing local affordable housing for over 20 years in this neighborhood. You may have even walked by and not even known what was going on behind the doors at 52nd and Duke. As the founder and executive director of Rose, Nick was responsible for providing over 500 front doors with families behind them, a baby boosters program that supports children in their most crucial first 1,000 days of life, and lots of other community-oriented programs and opportunities that are serving us and our neighbors. So thank you so much, Nick, for your work, for taking time to speak with us. I know there were some specific questions that the committee is hoping that you'll address, but I also hope you can help us with some insights and experience that might help us to also better serve the neighborhood and how we use the land that is right here. So again, thank you so much.
Oh, yeah, happy to be here. And that was a very nice introduction. Yeah, definitely, ask questions and, nudge me to make sure I'm talking about the things that you'd want to hear about. But I grew up in Southeast Portland, and I actually was a Vista volunteer with Southeast Uplift, and I helped organize the business associations on Belmont and Division in the mid-'80s. And they hired me on staff to work with outer Southeast Portland neighborhoods. And at that point, what used to be called Arrow Heights had just been annexed into the city. And one of the things, I was at the meetings where people from the city would talk about all the great benefits that would come to the neighborhood by annexing. And, that's been kind of hit and miss, or, there's still definitely, things I'd like to see from the city and the neighborhood. But I guess just focusing on the site. So I know it's at 52nd and Flavel. Which property is it exactly?
It is the little strip mall that has the market, the hair salon, and the laundry, and the beat up parking lot.
Yeah, okay. So, Rose's very first office actually was at 52nd and Flavel. It's a little storefront that's built onto a house that Dick Hazeltine and his wife owned. I know that corner. I know you're interested in the Mercado as an example, and I had a little bit to do with that, in that Hacienda CDC is a similar organization to Rose's nonprofit, and that case they work with the Latino community, and they had a business incubator where they were helping small businesses develop, and a lot of their folks that they worked with do food businesses. And so they were looking around for a site to locate that. And Rose had actually got a purchase agreement to buy that site where the Mercado is now at 72nd and Foster. And we weren't able to get the funding from the city to buy that. But that property was available. And, I'd talked to the folks at Hacienda about locating there. And I'm really happy they were able to do that. If people are interested, there's a good bit of information on Hacienda's website, or if you just Google Portland Mercado, they've got a case study and a lot of different things there. I think in terms of doing that at 52nd and Flavel, if you did something like the Mercado, that's probably a $5 to a $10 million project. And one of the big issues in Portland is that almost all the commercial redevelopment that happens through Prosper Portland is the city's redevelopment agency. They work almost exclusively in urban renewal areas, and so Brentwood, Darlington is not an urban renewal area. And so just a big issue is how would you get the resources together to buy the site and redevelop the site? And one of the things that really helped Hacienda is that they got the city to buy the site. And it took a number of years to come up with the plan and raise the money to do that. If you're not familiar with that, they've got a number of food carts there. They've got a storefront that has a number of different businesses, like a market. I think there's a butcher and a coffee shop. And it's just a really great asset to the neighborhood that they're there. Another approach that's interesting is something that Mercy Corps did called Community Investment Trust. And, Yeah, I think most people know Mercy Corps as an international aid agency that's based in Portland, but they've also got an arm that's called Mercy Corps Northwest that works on poverty issues in Oregon and Washington. And so this Community Investment Trust is, if you know what a real estate investment trust is, it's kind of like a mutual fund that invests in real estate. Or you can have, very wealthy investors that pool their money and put it into real estate. And the idea that Mercy Corps had is, what if you did something like a real estate investment trust that low-income people could invest in and own property in their neighborhood? And so Mercy Corps acquired a site at Southeast 122nd and Market Street that, it's fairly similar to the property on Flavel that is probably a 60s vintage strip mall. And so they have made that available to a lot of small businesses. And then I think their ultimate goal is to have 300 low-income investors that put in $10, $25, or $50 a month. And ultimately, they'll become the owners of that property, and it's something that they can basically, share in the profits, and they'll have an ownership share that they could sell or pass on to their kids, you name it. And so I know that Mercy Corps has developed kind of a how-to guide to do this. And that's another thing, if you look up Community Investment Trust, there's some good information on their site as well.
Could we ask a question real fast at this point?
Yeah, absolutely.
Anna, go ahead.
Yeah, oh, thank you. I have a question. Is Mercy Corps taking the property out of the market, of the, speculation market?
Yeah, exactly. That they're the owner, and I think their idea is that rather have the benefits of real estate ownership and appreciation go to wealthy people. That should be something that people in the neighborhood can profit from.
Yeah.
There's similar ideas that. Actually, some federal laws have helped make happen that are similar to the Community Investment Trust, that is a way that people can invest in those kind of properties. And I could look that up and provide more information on that if you're interested. Okay. But, it would, I'm sure Mercy Corps would be happy to come talk to the group and, tell you more about their project than I can. So then, just another resource I'll mention briefly is a national organization called Project for Public Spaces, and they do a lot of really great kind of placemaking information and resources. And they've got this concept they call light, quick, and cheap. And basically the idea is there's a lot of things that you can do in any place in the neighborhood that doesn't necessarily cost a lot of money, but can bring people together and serve different goals. And actually one of the projects they feature when I looked on their website is city repair here in Portland. You've probably seen a lot of the intersection repairs and different cool projects like that they've done. It may be something that could be applied to this site as well. And then I guess the last thing I'd mention, and I don't know if you've got any kind of relationship with the property owner, but if they're open, then a lot of times they might work with you on your ideas, and if it's something that's going to bring them tenants and bring them revenue, that might be something they would be interested to working with you on. Although, I've seen, all kinds of different reactions from property owners, but if you haven't talked to them, it's probably worth a shot.
Okay. Yeah, so the property was owned by a gentleman who lived in North Carolina, and he owned that for years. And then recently I looked online and I saw that now it's owned by a couple that lives out in East Portland. So yeah, no, that's a good idea. We could reach out to them and see if they're interested. Their property certainly isn't getting grabbed up at the moment. So maybe they would be willing to talk about some slightly different approach to the development of their property.
Yeah, I think just with COVID and just changes in people's lifestyle and habits, I think it's really up in the air what the future of commercial property is going to be. And sometimes that can be an opportunity for you, and it might be the property owners willing to try some new things, but certainly a lot of people have really made a go of food carts, and that could be something that could happen in the parking lot, regardless of who the tenants are in the actual buildings. And I think the neighborhood can do a lot in terms of marketing and both finding businesses to move in there, and then marketing to people to patronize the businesses when they're in there.
Scott, you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things I'd love to hear a little bit about, so as someone who's been in the neighborhood for a long time, seen the changes, helped with some of what I would call the positive changes, what are the sorts of things that you see like the neighborhood still needs? So when we're talking about uses for the land, like what are you identifying as shortcomings right now?
Obviously, affordable housing is near and dear to my heart, and I live at 42nd and Ogden, and walk through the neighborhood most days, and I'm sure you're saying just $200,000 houses get knocked down and replaced by $700,000 houses, and just a lot of people can't afford that. I think there's some opportunities with the residential infill project that you could have more plex properties that might be more affordable to people. I know Scott, you and I have talked about home ownership and way to help average income buyers get into home ownership. That's a big deal. And, I think you will see changes continue with the, commercial property in the neighborhood, that when you have more income, that does create more opportunities for businesses. And just, working in the neighborhood since 1986. I mean, I think for a long time, the Dairy Queen was the only restaurant in the neighborhood, and there's a few more now. So, I think the neighborhood can certainly use more of those kind of businesses.
Can I just follow up on this? I mean, I'm on the edge of Woodstock and Brentwood, Darlington. So I'm also on Ogden, 48.
Huh?
And we have a lot of residents in our neighborhood who say like, oh, how can we protect the, the older buildings and housing to keep the market prices down, which obviously is kind of counterproductive for every property owner who is kind of looking at, increasing the value and selling with a profit. And so, our neighbors are really like saying like, how can we intersect? What can we do to keep older structures also in terms of identity for the neighborhood, but also be responsible for having higher density? So there are these kind of, there are really conflicting interests in development.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Jane Jacobs, who wrote this book, Life and Death of the Great American Cities. And, I really believe the stuff she talks about in terms of a healthy neighborhood has old buildings and new buildings and a mixture of buildings and uses. And it's a tough thing, just that, you go back to the beginning of Portland and most American cities, that they're really run by real estate interests. And, it's in the interest of real estate to have, things get knocked down and more expensive things be put up. So I think that, let's see.
If I may, share this.
Yeah.
I probably read this. The dream house is a uniquely American form because for the first time in history, a civilization has created a utopian idea based on the house rather than the city or the nation. So, and this is something I'm really grappling with. I come from Germany. I'm, an architect since I was 12. So I'm so, I see all these problems that are associated with this idea of home ownership and taking this kind of, it's an economic base for everybody in this country to say like, I need a home, and it's mostly the single family home. So that's something that's really odd to me as an idea of life to begin with. But how do we negotiate and mediate these patterns of having this ownership and these economic patterns of having your life safety depending on it to a certain degree, and then saying like, how do we share and how do we integrate that?
Yeah, I think one of the road projects we're really proud of, it's at 80th and Cooper and Brentwood, Darlington, and it's 12, they're actually condominiums that we sold to moderate income buyers. And I think that part of the idea of that is if you do something that's smaller than the usual house, it'll be more affordable, but you can have really nice details to that. I think the idea behind Residential Info Project is to encourage more development like that would be more affordable. I'm really interested in the idea of cooperative homeownership, which you don't see a lot in Oregon, but I think that's another opportunity. I think the Mercy Corps idea is, a lot of people are renters and are going to continue to be renters, but they can own commercial property and make some appreciation off of that. And I think, people that were homeowners around 2008 know that, what goes up can come down. And, mostly houses have appreciated, but, that's not a guaranteed thing. So, the kinds of things I would also like to see are, there's something called a real estate transfer tax that's used a lot of places that basically taxes the appreciation when people sell homes, and you can structure that basically as a speculation tax. So people are coming in and buying and flipping houses and cashing in. Then some of that goes back to the public, and you can put that into affordable housing. And unfortunately, both of those things are illegal in Oregon because the realtors got that passed in the legislature in the 80s. And yeah, I think that would do a lot to discourage speculation, I think.
That's very interesting. How in Germany, how do people build wealth? I guess that's the best term I can think of. But instead of buying a house, what do they do?
Yeah, I don't know as much about Germany so much, but yeah, I do think that more people rent there. I think one thing that you see in Europe is they have a lot more social housing that's government owned, and lower rents for moderate income people. And yeah, so for both legitimate and illegitimate reasons, public housing has kind of gotten a bad name in the United States. And Home Forward is Portland's housing authority, and I think they've actually done a very good job. Yeah, I think in Germany they do have more of that government-owned housing. And I think they've also got more of a focus on workers and unions. And so I think a lot of the wealth building in places in Europe is just because working people have better wages and certainly better public benefits than you have here.
So Anna,
Yeah, I think it's just not comparable as a structure, because I mean, in Berlin, we still have a structure of 20% home ownership and 80% renters. So
Really?
that's just like, yeah, you can compare it. So you have much more reliable systems in terms of how you pay into retirement systems. And so there's no way of comparing this. But the point being for me is where I struggle with in the United States, that that you want to do good for society, but at the same time you need to have your wealth building and your safety net depending on real estate. And it's just like so counterproductive. and I mean, it's just like these opposing forces. And I really have a problem with that myself in my own life right now, where I say, like, how do I deal with this kind of, system that I don't believe in, but at the same time, I need to make sure that I'm surviving in a way. So, and then you have people that, don't have the means to even start to think about it. So how do you incorporate that? And, I wonder how these structures work for affordable housing, that you keep, properties out of the market. And so that's a really difficult way of, developing urban environments, I guess. But that's the only way to do so.
Okay, Maria, you had a comment.
Yeah, kind of the same idea that Anna was already talking about. I'm from Germany too, right? And for me, it felt when I came to the United States for the first time, I felt that ownership and to even worry about wealthiness or not wealthiness came into play for my safety feeling. That's something that I didn't need to worry about so much in Germany. Things like, can I afford my medical emergency? Can I send my kids to college and all that? For all of this, you need to be wealthy in the United States. So it's just a new approach for me, at least as a German. It was new to think that way about, oh gosh, okay, I guess I have to start gathering money. So it's it's just not so much in the reality, I think, for at least Germans. That's the only ones I can really talk about, as it is for Americans. And I know in Berlin, for example, the cooperative ownership is something that is very popular right now. Because ownership, as Anna said, is still kind of rare. It's really the upper class. It's a very low percentage. And the middle class is now often, because in Berlin too, we have a run to the real estate market, and it's very popular and prices go up and all that, even though there are regulations in place to stop real estate from being speculated with, like there's penalty tax if you sell or refinance within the first 10 years and all those things, and renter control and all that. But yeah, cooperative ownership is certainly very popular and coming. And yeah, I'm not sure where I was going with that, but it just came to mind. Thanks for listening.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So yeah, that's very interesting. It's very instructive to hear about Germany. Oh, I see Mo, you have your hand raised. Go ahead. You have to unmute.
Okay. Whew. Hi, everybody. My AKA is Monica, and my mom is from Germany. So born there in the 30s. So I had a couple comments. One, since we're on the housing thing, I have seen in some other areas I have lived. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. In other areas I have lived in, California and some other places that they have, or even in North Portland, I lived for a short bit, these community housing, that maybe that is something we can, the North Portland place looked really cool, that, people were growing, like veggies together and probably some other things. And, it looked good. It looked like so doable, probably better than what some people currently have. And, I don't know, you could do it maybe as an investment thing, that people could buy into something nicer, or people with not the means could somehow get into with some kind of program. That was just my first thought, but I'm really interested in bringing some things here to our neighborhood that we can ride our bikes to or walk to. And I'm all for this concept on 52nd and Flavel Street. Maybe one day that could be an awesome, the whole thing is bought up, and it's a nice go-to place that, where we go now to the Woodstock Farmers Market, this whole parking lot could be the farmers market on the Sunday or Saturday, whichever day we are, in the evening, some nights, and like a congregation place post-COVID, and have some cool shops and things in there, that's, safe to go to. I'm mostly saying that because I feel like going over to Safeway on Woodstock is not a safe kind of thing to me. And I just, I think that's important, especially if you're a woman riding around on a bike, you want to feel safe. And if that property isn't the property, I have noticed the bread store place, which might fall into Arrow Heights area. Flowers, maybe, I forget, I have different cities in my mind that have bread stores, but it's the bread store that sits there all by itself.
Right. It's
That-
Franz Bakery Outlet. Yeah.
Yes, okay, Franz, sorry.
It's okay.
It would be an awesome location for some type of bar or wine place, and some type of eatery that you could buy snacks, ride your bike over, sit, on picnic tables. And it's all by itself. If nothing else, it would be a great location to, maybe invest in or get, either whether it's GoFundMe or some type of program that we've already talked about, like a Mercado type thing. I just think we do need some things. We don't need to grow too tall too fast. But what I love from coming here from California is it's still quaint here to me. So, I'm newer. but quaint and safe and environmentally clean and all that. So those are just a few places, as well as I mentioned to maybe some of you before. There are businesses maybe on 52nd. I noticed in the past the knitting store. Am I still on? Sorry if I'm taking too long. That or the other bakery shop. Maybe that buyer might be interested in selling or expanding that. We could go in and do something that brings food and stuff to our neighborhood versus going over to Woodstock. Yeah.
Well, Mo, if I might interject, the city is about to start a big planning effort in our neighborhood. And we are hoping that it will name 52nd Avenue as a commercial corridor and 72nd, which would allow for growth of these kinds of destinations that you're talking about. So we're going to have a big opportunity coming up in the for Brentwood, Darlington, Woodstock area. And it's very exciting. And so there will be a great deal of public outreach involved in this, where we can make our case to the planners who already know this, by the way, but we can spur them on how much we need some destinations in Brentwood, Darlington that serve us well and serve the community and can be walked to and biked to safely. So they're on our side. They fought to get this this big grant, and so this is going to be a big opportunity. I was just talking earlier today with Pam Hodge, daydreaming about a corridor that goes all the way down 52nd, and maybe it takes advantage of those buildings, the White Stag building, and if Precision Cast Parts were to go away, we turn the corner and we can go all the way down to 45th, and there's the Franz Bakery outlet, and there's a little grocery there. We could have a wonderful L-shaped commercial corridor that would be just wonderful for the neighborhood. So we're gonna fight for that, and we'll see what happens. Another thing that's going to be possible is with the grant planning is increasing affordable housing as well. Pam, go ahead.
Well, I heard my name, so you've drawn me into the conversation, Stephanie. So we were talking about 52nd and Flavel site. Earlier, I think we were primarily focused on a Mercado as a commercial activity, but I think the parent organization, Hacienda CDC, is known also, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, for mixed use and affordable housing projects. So when we were talking to Marty Stockton, Stephanie, earlier in the same meeting, I think she got a little bit excited, at least that was my observation, for that site, envisioning a mixed use development, sort of leveraging off of the current political focus on affordable housing and still, retain commercial on the street level. So Nick, I'd be interested in your reaction as you look at possible public investment or public-private partnerships as a source of funding. Both the city, as you know, and Metro have allocated chunks of money for affordable housing projects. Could we reframe, the potential for the 52nd and Flavel site or some other site in Brentwood, Darlington, as mixed use development and tap into affordable housing dollars?
Yeah, I think that would be a really good mixed use site. And I would definitely track both the city's Portland Housing Bureau and Metro as to where they're locating their bond projects, because just the Southeast Uplift area has gotten less affordable housing investment than most other parts of the city. So they're working on a big project near 30th and Powell. But yeah, I guess there's the one on 72nd and Foster. But those are the only two I can think of in the whole Southeast Uplift area recently. And, you know, we've worked a lot in East Portland and Lentz and neighborhoods farther east lately. But yeah, we would love to be doing more in Brentwood, Darlington.
Great, thank you.
Rose CDC is responsible for an affordable housing apartment complex on 72nd, right? It's south of Flavelle Street.
Yeah, we've actually got, that one's called Johnson Creek Commons, and we've got another one called Country Squire that's kind of tucked away on the 72nd, a couple blocks south of Duke. So yeah, we've done, I think, 14 houses, both for rent and for sale in Brentwood, Darlington. And then, yeah, I'd mentioned the Cooper Street bungalows, and we did another 15-unit project near 80th and Duke. And then another one you might know, there's a fourplex across the street from Woodmere School that we did as part of a scattered site project. And that one has a special space for in-home childcare, which actually is another opportunity to keep in mind that the county voters passed the preschool for all measure in 2020, and that's ultimately going to have more resources both for developing preschool facilities as well as you know, worker training and supporting early childhood education. So that's a huge need in the neighborhood also.
And so is Rose ever going to be interested in mixed use development?
Oh, sure.
With cunning, what?
Yeah, one of the two latest projects we did is called Orchards of 82nd and 82nd and Division, and that has 48 apartments on top of both a community center and then offices for APANO, the Asian Pacific American Network of Oregon. So yeah, we've done that, and you know, we'll definitely do that in the future. And that's really a lot of the city's plan is to redevelop commercial corridors with mixed use.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you so much for all your suggestions. I just want to ask the other people who are party to our meeting here, Kimberly, Peter, Autumn, Sean, do you have anything that you would like to say about what we're discussing here? Would you like to see more commercial and affordable housing development in Brentwood, Darlington, for example? Yes, no? No comment?
Yeah, Sean here. I'd definitely like to see some more affordable housing development, as well as making the neighborhood less car focused, I guess, like being able to go shop and like pick up groceries without having to, you know, get in your car and drive. You know, it's not an incredible distance compared to like where I grew up in Yamhill County, but it's not the same experience I had when, you know, 20 years ago I lived in Northwest. I didn't have to have a car at all. You could be able to walk to a store.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to be able to see that happen in Brentwood, Darlington.
Well, again, yeah, I would too. And that is going to be a goal of the TGM planning to give us 20-minute neighborhood. But we'll have to see what's possible. And okay, and Peter Swinton, did you have a comment you'd like to make?
Yeah, I mean, I would be very interested in seeing some sort of either mixed use space that incorporated commercial and housing and could act as a sort of centralizing community space
Mhm.
at that intersection. I think that would be really cool. And I'm sort of wondering, I read the February BD Outlook and the update on the TGM grant, and it seemed a little amorphous just yet of how we interact with that planning effort. Because I kind of feel like, um, you know, a lot that's a sort of a good venue to begin to build a case for doing something different in that area. And so I'm wondering if you have any insights into how to better get involved with that effort or just to sit tight.
Sit tight just for a little bit. One thing that you could do, and when I'm going to address the TGM matter in a bit, but they're seeking members of a project advisory task force. No, the project advisory committee, I guess they're calling it, and PAC. And if you're interested, you could apply for that once they make application possible, which hasn't happened yet, but they're starting to do that. And then the neighborhoods that are affected by or in the study area are going to be reaching out to residents and collecting their ideas and their concerns and passing them on to the project managers during the data collection time. They've pushed back the public engagement, hoping that we'll all be vaccinated by the end of the summer and can engage in focus groups and in-person meetings and so on. And so it'll be towards the end of the summer that our ability to influence and speak up will gather force. But in the meantime, I'll try to keep everybody informed about the possibility of applying to the project advisory committee, because that could be an immediate way of engaging with the project managers.
And I'd like to be super respectful of Nick's time and just like give a big thank you for coming and chatting with us. I really appreciate that.
We've taken
Oh.
50 minutes of your time. Thank you.
I wanted to do a shout out to Nick. I don't know if you remember, I'm Mel Huey with Metro.
Sure.
And it's good to see you after all these years. I
Yeah.
just retired in January. So Nick is still working on doing all the community projects. It's good to see you and see that you're still a community leader. Thank you.
Yeah,
Hey,
thank you. So
yeah,
much.
my pleasure.
So we're going to assemble the list of recommendations that you've given us and work our way down the list. I think that having Mercy Corps come and talk to us is a good idea. Reaching out to the property owners is a really good idea. Researching Hacienda, we'll do that too. And thank you so much. I know we've taken a lot of your time, but I'm hoping that maybe we can call on you again in the future sometime, please.
Oh, sure, and feel free. Yeah, I'm just at 52nd and Duke, or shoot me an email, and yeah, if I can help, I'm happy to do that. Or if you see a property for sale, let me know, and I'll see if I can pull something together.
Oh, thank you so much. That's just wonderful. All right, we're going to let you go free now. You're welcome to stay with us or go get a glass of wine, whatever you please. And we'll go on to Scott Goodman. He wants to talk about Brent Sock Incubators. Go ahead.
All right,
Scott.
well, thanks so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Nick. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks all. So the quick thing that I want to check in with Sock Incubators is to sort of get a feel and some permission and an idea that I'm glad Anna is here that you can maybe help fill in some of. There is a potential chance, it's in the works right now, that at the Woodstock Community Center, that Sock Incubators, which does right-of-way improvements, trying to add urban habitat, make things more pedestrian friendly. It's a new project that we've started up, but is doing fine. We're clipping along. So at the Woodstock Community Center, we're hoping to be able to, on Knight Street, which is behind, I guess, the next one after Woodstock, in that space over there, do some landscaping, make something nice. And what my creative vision that I'm hoping can happen is to do something to connect the two neighborhood spaces where I'm trying to do some weaving things. So like woven fences are a neighborhood thing. They're pretty easy to do. They're kid friendly, and you can also make little sculptures out of them. And so what I think would be a cool thing to connect Woodstock and Brentwood Darlington, the name is Sock Incubators, is to do like the tail of a fish at the Woodstock Community Center and say like the head of the fish at the Brentwood Darlington Community Center as a way of doing some like artwork, a cohesive theme that connects them. And I wanted to check in with land use people about that idea, if that's worth pursuing, if there's things that I should consider that I haven't considered. And so it was really just an idea that a couple collaborators on it had that I want to check in about.
Well, I think it's, go ahead. Let me just say, speak up just for a second. I think it's a charming idea. I'm eager to learn more about our community center and who exactly owns it and who exactly is responsible for which aspects of it and who may make use of it and who makes use of it now and for what. My understanding is very cloudy. I know Pam Hodge did some research on it, and as I recall, Pam, you traced paperwork back to something that didn't get signed that would have turned the property from the schools over to Parks and Rec or vice versa. And so we don't have a clear understanding of who has title to the community center.
Well, it's been several years since I looked at that issue, so it's not in current memory, but I think it was Mary Davis who did the most recent research on that issue for the board. And, you know, there was some similar confusion around the division of properties and title on Learning Gardens Lab and the greenhouses and all of that. So yes, I agree. I mean, that should still be on our to-do research list, but I don't have an answer for you today.
Oh yeah, no, I don't.
So, I mean, Scott, in your earlier request for feedback on this art project, I'm just a little curious as to why the fish motif. Are we reaching out to the fish market for funding, or, you know, and they say fish rot from the head. That was so hopefully that's not the Brentwood.
So the fish motif, there was a couple reasons, and it's not set in stone at all. One is that Chinook salmon is an important food source, indigenous thing from this region. Two, fish are sort of easy to do sculpturally speaking. Trying to do something like an eagle or like a crow is way more difficult to weave, whereas these like large simple shapes are easier to do. And then other than that, no real good reason for that.
So would this be a standalone sculpture sort of thing out in the yard, or what are you envisioning?
So it is still like super early in the idea phase. We're like, oh, I'm trying to think about it, reach out to community folks. I know this group better than I do the Brentwood Darlington Neighborhood Association at large. So I'm starting with the people that I know a little bit more. What I hope would happen is a little bit of some landscaping, making it a little more inviting to the public as public spaces, public meeting spaces. And I always just, art is a very important way of leading to neighborhood identity and inviting people in. You don't have to speak a specific language to recognize what a bench is or what a piece of artwork is.
Okay, so do you envision the BDNA being responsible for fixing the fence when the wind blows it over and watering the landscape? I mean, that's fine. We just have to make sure that we had a commitment from somebody somewhere that this thing would be maintained, because it's nothing worse than starting out with a great community project and then watching it deteriorate and over time. So we would need to make sure that we knew exactly what our role was. But I myself love the idea, and we'd have some sort of a sign, right, that would link our fish head to your fish tail or whatever.
No rotting. So to your point about the maintenance of it, one other thing is that with this woven fence, one of the things that I think is neat about it is just how easy it is, and that it's not permanent. Like, this will break at some point and it won't. Woven fences, depending on how nice of a job and the materials, last somewhere from 5 to 10 years. It's not a permanent thing by any means. And so the thought is there's an opportunity to, okay, maintain it, or not have too big of a commitment and you just knock it down and it sticks that are compost after that. It's just a neat, clear arrangement of them.
Okay, well, as long as we had a good idea of what we would do with it and not just let it deteriorate. And so, yeah, okay, so I'm thinking of a lot of different things, but one thing we would need to do is get permission from somebody, but we don't know who, to use land somewhere, probably in the front of the community center. So we'll talk to Mary Davis and Chelsea Powers and then Northwest Impact and Parks and Schools, and we'll try to find out how we can get control of some space, and then but I think it's a lovely idea.
Anna with a hand.
Neighborhoods.
Yeah, if I may talk from the tail end. So there is a lot of interest from the Woodstock neighborhood to engage in this project, and we are going to prepare an application with a small grants with Southeast Uplift, as Pam just put in the chat to ask. So this is our idea to target this, to make it happen. And I don't know, we are also really in the beginning steps of all this. Our idea is we just had our annual meeting with Parks and Recs because they are owning our community building, and the Woodstock Neighborhood Association has a contract with Parks and Recs for maintenance and certain outside activities and cleanups. And I also, this afternoon, I had a long discussion with Leah Fisher from Southeast Uplift about insurance issues. So you really have to investigate who is the owner of your property and what you are doing and what you're allowed to do and what's covered and what's not. Mm-hmm. It became highly complicated during the last year. For all neighborhood associations, independent of what's owned by Parks and Recs and other people. So I highly recommend to start that conversation very soon.
Right, no, absolutely.
And so that's one part. The other part is that Woodstock Neighborhood Association wants to have a more engaging outside area for their community center. especially as long as we are still in the lockdown phases. And we also have Parks and Recs has a preschool operating from our community center, and they are using the tiny, you can hardly call it yard, but something that could be called that. And we are trying to find a place where we can engage, with the kids and with the neighbors to have this kind of outside area. And on the sculpture part, we haven't really advanced on that, but I kind of like this idea of having this kind of identifier. And I know I spoke with Scott about other properties where private residences are chiming in, and we have a lot of these little unimproved roadways, as they call it, where there are already really nice places to meet and to congregate, where car traffic is cut out. And I always thought about these kind of identifiers, not so much in terms of, oh, there's a Woodstock Community Center and the Brentwood Darlington Community Center, but there's actually really a whole, like path through the neighborhoods that could be extended. And there might be an identifier that works through, the weaving idea. And if it is a coherent structure or sculpture, or if it's independent, just sculptural things that have a certain kind of similarity to create this kind of identity and coherence through the neighborhood. I mean, there are a lot of things that we still have to talk through, but at the first idea, I kind of like this kind of, it's so Portland in a way, and I think we can also just get a lot of people involved in it. And what happened with these, opening these spaces, these right-of-way spaces, and sitting in the commons on Duke and 50th? Yeah, Duke and 50th, and just sitting there having our tiny little meetings and discussions. And you have so many more people that usually not engaging in community work, walking by and starting to talk to you is just like such an enlightenment for me.
Oh.
I said, like, wow, we do get these people to be aware that, we can just be together and do things together, and also have an exchange of what's going on in the neighborhood and what the needs are. And I mean, we are all engaged people, and we keep doing this, and we, occasionally get overextended in their work, but there are a lot of people who just want to enjoy this. And so I think this idea of starting at the centers of these both community centers that we have might be a good idea. To say like, oh, we're connecting neighborhoods and bridging these kind of boundaries.
Well, maybe the greenway that is planned to go through the center of Brentwood Darlington might offer an opportunity for a path alongside it that would be the basis for a connector of the two neighborhoods. And maybe the path doesn't follow the greenway all the way through to 45th, but when it gets to 52nd or a little bit in, goes up north towards Woodstock Center. I don't know, but seems to me the TGM planning effort would be a good place to bring up the idea of a connecting path.
Yeah.
With identifiers.
That's a good suggestion, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, lovely. Well, Scott, I love the idea. And if we can't figure out the community center, maybe the Lane Middle School would be willing to host us. It's almost to the community center. So I don't know. There's a lot of information to find out, but I personally just think it's a wonderful idea to connect our two neighborhoods. And we want to start working more closely together. We've started a bit with through the the land use committees beginning to meet together and get to know one another. And we would like the neighborhood associations to be able to work close together. And so the path is a lovely symbol, and having artwork and sculpture along it just sounds like a wonderful idea. Maybe thousands of fish sculptures, right? Anyway, okay. Yes, all right. Well, we're gonna embrace this idea, Scott. So we'll work with you on it, and we'll find out about the community center. Okay. All right, so let me go on real fast to the TGM. It's after 8, but I'll go real fast. We almost lost this planning effort because of COVID, but the planners at PBOT were able to get, which was suffering a big financial hit because of the pandemic, got the consultant fee transferred to the department to pay planning staff salaries. And so they rescued this planning effort, and we're very grateful to them. Right now, they're trying to set up their website and trying to start forming their different committees. They're going to have a technical advisory committee that's composed of mainly of staff from different bureaus that will advise them. And then they want this this project advisory committee that's drawn from the neighborhood, businessmen, residents, business owners, they want a whole wide swath of representatives. And they've kind of asked us land use people to not try to be on the committee because they're already in touch with us and will be meeting with us regularly too. So Peter, I'll be sending out notices, and you might consider that. I'm going to post the new website here in the chat, and this is for the TGM. It's called Lower Southeast Rising. That's what they call the planning effort. I myself don't like that name, so I just call it the TGM plan. But you may all call it whatever you want. You could call it the Chinook Salmon plan, maybe. But anything's better than Lower Southeast Rising. But anyway, that's another subject. Right now they're asking people to apply for this committee, and they send everyone to the website, and then there's nothing there except the telephone numbers and email addresses of the planners. So Peter, go to that website and email one of the planners, one of the project people, and say, you're very interested, where do I apply? And then maybe that will get them to post an application form. So that would be a great thing if you could do that. And thank you. All right. So, and I posted the website in the chat, so you can take a look at it. We're able to get a good transit consultant in the project. It is oh God, now I'm blanking on the name. That it's somebody who lives in the neighborhood and has the local business and advises transit companies around the around the nation, actually, and has worked closely with TriMet. And I guess I'm getting tired because I just can't remember the name of this person, but we're very lucky to have him. He lives in the neighborhood and he doesn't like the way the transit lines are set up. So we're already ahead of the game by having him, because the idea is to recommend a different way of serving the area with bus routes that we can then take to TriMet after the plan is wrapped up. And TriMet committed to helping us 2 years ago when we had a meeting, and there was very cordial, and they've offered their support. So we feel that we can improve transit service here, and bike lanes and pedestrian crossings, and we have, I think, the chance to create a beautiful vision for our neighborhood. And so once the public outreach starts, that's in addition to this project advisory committee, we'll be able to communicate with the project managers, and they'll be actively reaching out to us for focus groups and surveys and email inquiries and so on. And hopefully they'll put something on their website that we can respond to. So anyway, that is all I want to say about the TGM. You know, we're just very lucky to have it, and we'll start feeling its presence pretty soon. They're still trying to work out the way they're going to approach being equitable and just, and keep people from being pushed out of our neighborhood who are low income. They're very dedicated to preserving our neighborhood and not turning it into a very gentrified kind of place that where, you know, the minimum house price is $500,000 and so on. So that is it for TGM, and do you have any questions? So I know I've been very brief about it because of the time. No, I've been sending out a lot of information on it, so we'll see. And Peter, if you can let me know what you find out, you know, when you reach out to try to apply for this pact, if you can write to me at bdlanduse@gmail.com, that would be fabulous. So,
Yeah.
because I think they'll respond to you better than they would to me because they know my name. So if we get someone who's a genuine resident of the neighborhood and not associated with the land use, then they would like that. Okay, all right. I'm not going to go into the other things on the agenda. We can take them up next time. There's no emergency on trees and speeding, and it's all going to be with us next time as well. Is there any business that anyone would like to bring up that we haven't addressed here today? A fish, a Brent stock fish, very nice. Yeah. Okay. All right. It's going to be woven out of branches. Lovely. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. This has been very, very informative and a lot of fun, and I appreciate y'all being here. And let's just go upward and onward. This looks very promising, and we'll start following Nick Sobey's recommendations, and I'm so grateful to him. Scott, would you convey to him, and I will too with an email, but just tell him how grateful we are for the information and the fact that he's willing to help us going forward. That's just outstanding. And okay, with that, I'm going to wish you all good night and thank you again, and join us again in a month, and we'll just keep chugging along. All right,
Thank
bye-bye.
you so much. As always, you are so well prepared.
Oh.
It's incredible, Stephanie. You do such a good